student disengagement, the rise of AI, and many other pressures on higher ed are stacking up fast. How to Change the World and Instructure just released a white paper on the power of mass experiential learning. And yes, I said it, mass experiential learning. You have to check this out. It's a roadmap for re-energizing students and building the skills they'll need in an AI-driven world. A link to part one of the white paper is in the episode description. And now, enjoy this episode sponsored by our friends at How to Change the World.
Hey, everybody, it's Darin Francis with Harbinger Lane, and this is the Signals in Higher Ed podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me from Brazil, Marcello Nitz. He's the rector of the Instituto Mauá de Tecnologia. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Darin. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to speak English with me because my Portuguese is not so good, as you can tell. But I do want to talk with you. We met and had a nice conversation, and what really stood out was how you think about human-centered engineering and experiential learning in the context of human-centered engineering. And I really want to get into that, but I think it would be great to actually start and just talk a little bit about your background, what got you to the point of leading an institution like you are today, and maybe some steps along the way that were pivotal for you.
Okay. So I am a food engineer. So in Brazil, we have food engineering as an engineering career. It's different from, for example, the United States, where you have chemical engineering and food science. Food engineering is a mix of food science and chemical engineering. And during my engineering program, I had already decided that I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to make impact through, preparing engineers for the future instead of working in an industry where you can impact, the impact is lower. I want to make impact through my students, and I always liked research as well. So after I finished I got my degree in food engineering, I went to the master's program. I worked in the industry for some time, for some months, but I always wanted to. Then I got a scholarship for the master degree, and I got my master, and I got a job in the university. So my master's and PhD was together with my academic career. After I became a professor, I was invited by my university, to become a professor, and that was fascinating. I loved my students, and the job of being a professor. That was amazing. And then I started to be interested in leadership in higher education. Then I was invited to become the program director of chemical engineering and the food engineering program in my university. And then I became the dean of the engineering school. And after 12 years as a dean, I became the rector, then responsible for all the programs we have here. So that's my story.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And it's nice to see when someone has actually come up within the same institution, the appreciation you have for a lot of the subtle things, and ways that you want to grow things because you've been there long enough. You've got a vision and a perspective. But let's help our listeners understand your institution a little bit more. For those that are unfamiliar with Brazilian higher education, can you talk a little bit about your mission, who your students are, and what makes the university distinctive?
Okay, that's a very good question. Because in Brazil, let me try to make it simple. We have the public universities, big public universities, and they are tuition-free universities, and they are research-oriented. Okay, and then we have private institutes, just like mine, that we need tuitions. Okay, and we have a different profile. Although we have research, we focus much more on applied research. Okay, research together with industry for innovation. So that's something very different when you compare private institutes like mine and public universities. And we are a very reputable engineering school here in Brazil, with a significant contribution to the country by delivering a lot of competent engineers in the market that are making difference in the world. And well, that's what makes us distinctive, this connection with industry and applied research. And but there's a point, an interesting point. We must be much more attractive for students. So we try to, deliver more value. And why we have to do that? Because students, they are attracted to public universities because they are free. They are good, of course, they are very good. But besides being good, they don't have tuitions. So we have to be excellent if we want to get the best students, because we have the tuition. So that's a big challenge for us. And that's why we are very interested in delivering more value and distinguished project. Okay, that's why we've been in the education scenario for so long time.
Yeah, it does sound like a challenge that you've risen to and done quite well by. And uh, what are unique challenges in engineering education that you've witnessed over the last 29, 30 years?
In the past, Darin, we used to be proud of how rigorous we were, okay, the rigor, and how difficult the engineering program is. And we were sometimes proud of the high dropout rates. We have difficult programs, and we just have here the most well prepared students, the ones who can't survive, they drop out. And people were proud of that. And we've been trying to change that over time, and saying that high dropout rates in engineering programs is a failure, not a signal of success. But the point is, we still value very much, of course, rigor in engineering education. So how can you keep the rigor and keep the students? That's I think this is the big challenge in engineering education nowadays. And engineering is not so attractive as it used to be in the past. We have this problem in Brazil. Students, they they're going to different careers, they avoid engineering, and we must be more attractive. That's a big challenge. And this is not a challenge only in Brazil. I have a lot of friends, and I participate in international forums in engineering education. That's a problem in Latin America. That's a problem in some countries in Europe. Germany, for example, Spain. They're facing the same problem of attraction to the engineering career.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how does engineering education itself differ in Brazil from other countries?
I don't think it's much different, because we use the same books, we use the same, the framework. I think it's almost the same all over the world. Okay, the profile of the students is a bit different. The way we deliver classes is slightly different. For example, I can see that in the United States you have less class hours than we have in Brazil. And the students, they are more autonomous. They have more homework and assignments to do. And we have more classes, more working hours in campus than other countries. That's a difference that I can see when you compare Brazil, for example, with the United States. But the rigor and the programs and the contents, and the challenges, I think they are basically the same.
Okay. Well, that's helpful for our listeners too. So let's talk about experiential learning. Um, what made you believe experiential learning in specifically human-centered approaches could help you address something like retention?
We need to attract more people to the engineering career. The profile of the students we've been attracting over the time is always the same profile. The students who are interested in mathematics, they like science, they like technology. That's the kind of students that are traditionally attracted to engineering. And we need to expand, okay, to reach a more diverse group of students. And we need students who not only like mathematics and science, but also like people, because there are lots of students who want to make a difference in the world. They want to deliver solutions to our big grand challenges, but they don't see they can do that through engineering because of course they understand that the technology is engineering, but they have to see the value, the purpose of engineering. So when you offer this perspective to young people, they engaged people, I think we can attract more students. Okay, so the programs they must change in order to attract the students. And I'll get to the experiential learning, because there's another problem about engineering education. uh, we focused a lot on knowledge, and now we are focusing more on competencies, because the market, they need students who can deliver the solutions. Sometimes they have the knowledge, but they don't know how to actually solve the problem. And competency is, you apply the knowledge. And how do you apply knowledge? You need, hands-on projects. And that's why experiential learning is so important.
That makes a lot of sense, and especially in engineering where you can do that. You mentioned the market, so I'm curious, what feedback do you get from employer partners? Does that has that informed or shaped the types of experiences that you give students to give them competencies like you're suggesting?
The market appreciates that very much, and we have been attracting partners to have their laboratories here, to have their experiences here, to deliver courses here, and we have that with some partners. Okay, so that they can come here and have this interaction with students and help us build our programs. So the feedback is very positive. But there's one funny thing about the market, about the industry. They're always complaining about the competencies of our students. They are never satisfied, and they are right, because their perspective, they want to get a ready-to-go engineer, and it's impossible to deliver engineer that is ready to to succeed in every kind of industry and market. So what we have to deliver is a very good engineer with the basic competences, the fundamental knowledge, and ready to a long life learning. So it's difficult to balance the needs of the industry and the program we have. They will always will be unsatisfied.
Right. Well, that's fair. That's fair. I've
Yeah.
heard similar things from other schools. Tell me more about human-centered, the human-centered engineering, because it feels like a departure or a difference from traditional experiential learning. Maybe talk about where that came from for you and how you use it.
Yeah, and I will connect that with the experiential learning that you mentioned and the dropout rates. Everything is connected. So, what is human-centered engineering? It's, let's say that it's a different way of telling the story. So, engineering is engineering, okay? technology, science, apply it to solve problems. So this is what engineering is all about. The difference is that we have a different narrative. We show the students the impact, the social impact of engineering. So I'll give you a simple example. For example, the students are designing a bridge. Okay, so instead of only designing the bridge and as a technical uh, as an object of engineering, okay, open some space to discuss what change this bridge will make in the community, okay, in society. So will it help deliver a solution to the people to improve their lives? So when I say human-centered engineering is keep all the rigor you have, okay, in engineering technology, but bring to the discussion the impact it will make in people's lives, so that you can, show a broader perspective to the engineers.
I love that. That's exciting. I mean, just I can imagine the project of being assigned to build a bridge, and
Yeah,
you immediately start to think through the math and through the operation of building it. But when you have to pause and actually think about something in a way much bigger than a bridge, uh, it's the impact on people's lives um, that has an impact on you as the designer, but it probably also makes you ask new questions about the requirements for this bridge,
of
right?
course, of
Yeah.
course, of course. And then you can also attract students who are you will attract students who are fascinated with mathematics and the calculus, the designing the bridge itself. But you can also attract people who are engaged, and they will see that through engineering they can change people's lives. So then for example, we have 20% of female students in engineering in Brazil. 20%. So why is that? We're doing something wrong. Okay. So we need students who are not only interested in maths, but students who are interested in people. Okay. And we have a homework to do. So to welcome these students and bring this conversation, this approach, this new approach to the programs.
I really like that because it feels to me, and I might be getting ahead, so you tell me, but it feels to me like I'm starting to see how human centered engineering also helps to solve the retention problem. Um,
Yep.
because if you're helping me identify within myself that that connection of my engineering work to solving real human problems, that feels like something that will motivate me to persist through hard and difficult um, uh, curriculum.
I have a nice story about a student of ours here, industrial engineering, and she was in her last year, and she went to a factory in the Northeast, chew nuts factory. Okay, it's a social project in the Northeast where volunteers they financed a factory to help people in that region, and a group of students went there to help to improve their industrial process. When she came back, I interviewed her and asked how was how that experience was, and she was so touched by that experience. She said it was fascinating. It changed my motivation to be a professional, and I can see that through engineering we can make the difference in the world. We can help people. I wish I had had this experience before. I would be much more engaged in the program. And she was just she just said that. I didn't have to to pull that out from her. And I asked her another question. So you went there, you had to ask for a leave for your employers. And how did they see that you spent a week there and you could not go to work? Did they incentivize you? As you said, well, they were very happy because they wanted me to have that experience. They valued that experience. And then when I came back, then I see that they were right, because I developed something, that's very valuable for some companies, which is empathy. Okay. And she said, well, that was great. That was great for me. And that was great for my employers. They valued that experience as well.
It makes me think more and more as I have this conversation with different leaders at different institutions. We measure learning, we measure skills in some instances, or competencies, as we were talking about. But it feels like there's another layer of the human experience that almost needs to be measured. that that clearly you're making happen through the way you've designed these experiences. But you're touching on somebody getting connected to meaning and values and purpose. So have you thought about this in terms of a measurement of some kind to assess the effectiveness of a program based on its ability to deliver this kind of outcome like this?
Well, that's a big challenge. We have here a group of people thinking on that, of measuring things, measuring competences, and this is something that we have to, to think of. It's becoming a very important part of our program, to measure the engagement of students and the sense of belonging. We can see papers, okay, in engineering education conferences that try to measure engagement of students. That's something that we have to, to apply here.
And I liked the way you immediately went to measuring belonging almost, right?
Yeah,
That'd be an interesting measurement. But onto this type of experience that this young woman had in her senior year. And how do you actually implement and structure an opportunity like this so that it actually gives students this kind of visceral experience?
It must be intentional. So it's something that is top down. We want to do that. It's intentional. But dealing with professors is like herding cats, and this is a compliment. Okay, because they are very critical. You just don't say you do it and they will do it. No, they're like cats. They will do it if they want to do it. And for teachers, professors to do that, they must be persuaded. They must see the value. So we have to invest on faculty training and show them that giving the students this kind of experience increases their competences, their employability, and it's the right thing to do. So investing in professors, okay, in training professors as well. And the other thing is, our curricula, we have 10% of the time they have to do service learning in general. Okay, they must have that kind of experience. So they have to go to communities and bring problems to be solved, but not to be solved without interacting with these communities. So it's not that you go there and imagine what their problem is. No, you go there, you listen to them, try to identify opportunities of improvement, and then you start solving the problems together with them, always together with them. That's the way you develop empathy, because sometimes some programs they do something, they imagine what the problem is, and they develop devices they think that people need, that people want. So you have to go there, you have to actually listen to them. So this is something that we are doing intentionally. service learning, going to the communities. And we do that with the industry as well, okay? Not only with poor or vulnerable communities, but with the whole society. We want students to, to go and listen to to the partner and see what the problem is, and then you bring the problem to be solved in the university.
So I wonder about do you have any examples of when you don't include the human-centered experience? Like, is there an example of when it goes wrong? Can you think of examples in your teaching that where, hey, this is why we do it, because this situation didn't account for this human element, and here's what went wrong?
Well, I have an example from a Netflix series. I think it's The Code with Bill Gates.
Okay.
And I remember there was a part of that program, and they were discussing the installation of a water-free toilet in a poor community in Africa. They were discussing where the size of the cabinet and everything. And then a woman came and said, it's not going to work. But the toilet was fantastic. The project was amazing. But she said, it's not going to work. And people stopped and said, why is not going to work? Because this space is too small. And the African mother, she won't go into that space and leave her children outside. So you must build a place where her children will be together with her. So it's a simple thing. If the mother were there, they would have asked her if that was appropriate, and she would have said that. So that's a good example. You have to listen to the user, okay, the person who is going to use that thing. So, for example, we have here a project together with a hospital that takes care of people with disabilities, with problems. So when we want to develop toys or wheelchairs or things, protheses to those students, to those patients, sorry, we have to listen to them, to their mothers, to their therapists. Say, is this appropriate? And they give fantastic feedbacks because they know, what the needs are. So we have to develop that kind of competency in our students.
As you are teaching your students about human-centered design effectively, when do they experience judgment calls that they have to make, or decisions that they have to make, where whether or not they should design something, like maybe the design will have a negative impact on people, or I wonder if there are examples where ethics and critical decision-making skills have to say, we should stop. We shouldn't make this one product because we think it could hurt people.
I had a group of students in that same hospital. They were challenged with a project, a walker, okay, that could, climb stairs, okay, because most of the walkers, they are flat, and people that use them, they have difficulties in, going up or down the stairs. So they were developing that device, and a very important discussion came. So is it safe to use a walker on a stair? So this is something that, this kind of discussion comes. So are you really taking into account if a doctor will prescribe that walker to a patient, and if that will put the patient in risk? And the projects, the design is much more, challenging, because you have to consider those ethical aspects. So it's another very complex. You have to listen to the doctors, to the patients. And another thing, you have to connect also with the industry that will manufacture those devices.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's also a cost benefit analysis that they need to do.
Otherwise, that's the difference between an invention and an innovation. Okay, because engineers they are very good in the technical aspect. They will develop a walker. Okay, well, that's perfect. But in order to be really an innovation, somebody will have to manufacture that. Okay, so you have to take into account not only the user experience and the need, but also the business aspect of that. That's something that we also have here in our engineering program. Uh, 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 Develop the entrepreneurial and the business mindset of students. They see that you can have a very nice and creative product that the user likes. So you have that need satisfied, but who's gonna manufacture that? So
Yeah. Um, there's a lot that you're able to help a student learn, but also to discern that they can have, they, they're going to have to come up with making good judgment, both from a business standpoint and a societal standpoint. Um, uh, I'm fascinated that the human centered design approach that you've taken has really applied in all of these different areas of engineering. Are there other examples that we should take into account where this has been particularly effective?
I'll give you examples. For example, in softwares, in apps that the students also like to develop that, and I can give you. We can talk. For example, Instagram, Facebook, the social media apps. Okay, so that's something that we have to teach our students. The idea is okay. People like that. People will use that. But what are the consequences of technology in people's habits? Is it your business or is not your business? Because they will say, "Well, I'm just a developer. I'm just a tech guy. So I'm gonna deliver this product to the market, and I don't care if people if it will damage society." This is not a good thing. We have to develop this critical thinking in our developers. For
Yeah.
example, I'm a food engineer. I can say, well, I can manufacture any kind of industrial food, and it's people's choice if they're gonna buy and eat a product with high fat, high salt content, or whatever. No, it's not only their problem. It's my responsibility as an engineer to deliver more, to deliver healthier products. So of course I have to negotiate that with my employer. It's a complex thing. But I'm part of this complex system. And as an engineer, I have to be conscious of that. I have to be critical when I have to choose an ingredient instead of another. What are the impacts? Am I being ethical with people? So this kind of critical thinking we have to develop in our students.
You remind me about, we've heard of a few different high profile engineers leaving large AI firms because of their ethical concerns with things that were happening. This has been in the news. So uh, it's a good point, developing that skill to be able to not just see it, acknowledge it, but actually stand up um, and uh, share the concerns within the company that they're working for will be an important skill to have.
Yeah, that's great. And step by step, we can make the world better. Okay,
Yeah.
and we are in education. at least we have to try.
Yeah, I agree. Well, this is really helpful. I want to actually close the conversation on human-centered engineering, thinking with you about the outcomes. So you've done a lot of work to embed this into your curriculum. Um, Now, since you've been doing it, what is the evidence that you've gathered about the impact of these programs?
Okay, it's early, yeah, to measure the whole impact, but we started a different program in engineering. We had a curricular change that embraces human-centered engineering, more experiential learning, okay, and we had a good results in dropout rates, because the dropout rates, they are very high in the first year, in the first semesters, okay, and it fell by half. That was amazing. Okay, that was amazing. We had sort of 25% dropout in the beginning, in the first 2 semesters, and now we have half that. So that's very nice.
Wow.
That's a great achievement for us. There's a lot of things to do yet, to improve, but good numbers. We're very happy with that.
So if an engineering dean or a provost is listening right now and they face similar challenges, high dropout rates, questions about relevance, students who are technically skilled but lack a broader perspective, how does your experience translate to them? What should they know when they think about this today?
Well, the thing is, I, I think that most of the deans and professors in engineer, they fear a lot to lose rigor. Okay, they fear that a lot, and we fear that too. Okay, because we know how challenging engineering is, the knowledge that they have to learn, and the competencies, but we focus very much on the technical competencies. What my message to them is, it is possible to do that, to keep the rigor and bring the human value into the program, and then you will have more engaged students. It's possible to that. It's a very nice, beautiful initiative that everybody should embrace.
And then I have to ask, how do you get faculty to say yes to this?
It's difficult. It's impossible to have 100%, believing this is a good thing. It takes time. Just like I said, they're like cats, right? They need to be convinced and attracted to the project. What we have to do as deans, as leaders, is to see why are they being resistant, and trying to see where they can contribute, because sometimes they don't see value. They don't believe that going to a community is something that is powerful. Okay, you don't go, your colleague will go. You can still be useful in our faculty, but you have to find the right place for everyone. And then you can, and the thing that we do a lot, we use students to convince and persuade faculty. When the students give their positive feedbacks, it's not the dean who is saying, is the students are saying. So that's my strategy.
That's a great idea. And let me close with one more question for you, thinking about this as the rector of a great institute in Brazil, focusing on making these new innovative changes to engineering. If you look out 5 or 10 years, um, how do you see engineering education evolving? What is your vision?
With more women, first thing, okay, we have only 20-25% women in engineering careers. That's something that, we cannot accept. And it's part, in my point of view, it's part of the same problem. Students, they don't see engineering as, it should be seen as you can make impact through engineering. So I want I want people to see that engineering is not only hard, but it's also valuable. You can impact the world. So we will have more students attracted to engineering careers, more women, more diversity, a more prepared faculty to this change.
That sounds great. I also think it's been inspiring to hear you think about this through the lens of creating meaning and having a real impact on society and on other people. So thank you so much, Marcello Nitz, for joining us today.
Thank you, Darin. It's a pleasure.